Hello, hello. Welcome to What's Working Now. I am your host, Katie Richardson. Today we are talking about entrepreneurs who might work a little too much. This is something about entrepreneurship that I think we don't talk about enough. And there's this glorification of busy and I'll sleep when I'm dead, and it has consequences. And today's guest really understands this. And I feel strongly, and I'm sure, Scott, you feel the same, that there's a way to still achieve really high, incredible, amazing results without the overwhelm, without the consequences of really pushing ourselves to beyond the limit. And so before you start talking, I want to share your bio with everybody because I really think it gives people a sense for what the conversation is going to be today. Scott Anderson is a serial entrepreneur currently launching company number 5, having sold 6 of your companies. He's an executive coach, a licensed mental health therapist, founder of PTSD Treatment Tech Accelerator, and the website for that is @easeusa.org. He's the creator of Burnout Breakthrough, a system proven to help leaders and their teams recover from and prevent, because it is preventable, prevent the exhaustion and hopelessness of burnout and live their best lives ever. Scott Anderson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Katie. It's really great to be here.
I mean, there's so much that I want to dive into with you. And you and I are meeting for the first time right now, and I'm really excited to really dive into your story. And so tell us the story of an experience that has really formed and shaped how you view the world today.
Your introduction was so interesting to me because there is this sort of almost superstitious belief around, you've got to grind and suffer and damn near die to be successful as an entrepreneur. And there really is this sort of it's deeply ingrained in the Americana psyche that, maybe going back to our Puritan roots, but this whole idea around suffering is that work must be very, very hard, and you must work very, very hard. And in fact, to be really successful as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to work harder than anybody else. And there's this whole identity around kind of suffering and also being willing to put your health, both mental and physical, on the line. It's like a bizarre red badge of courage.
It is.
And and in fact, I mean, what I've had to learn, mainly because I did put my mental health and physical health on the line, I really did to the point of death, real death.
Wow.
Was that that isn't the answer, that it's not it's not an hour in, hour out, sort of correlation. And in fact, to live in that paradigm of, how many hours invested equals how much success out is, doesn't scale, among other things. It's got lots of inherent flaws, not the least of which is the flaw of the entrepreneur dying at his desk.
Right.
So, I mean, I've lived that myself. I mean, I really bought in entirely to the idea of I will outwork anybody. I may not be the smartest person in the room, but I'm going to outwork. I can and will outwork anybody. I want more than anybody else, and I'm willing to. And the way to show that passion or ambition is to stress more, to worry more, and just in an absolute sense to put more time into it. And
I mean, you're pointing out so many. Yeah, you're pointing out so many incredible things. You said towards the beginning how it becomes this identity of I'm going to work harder than anybody else. And that can be very virtuous. And yet sometimes as entrepreneurs, as people who are extremely high performing or extremely successful, we can take even virtuous things and push them to the extreme and push ourselves, like you said, to the brink of death. So was there, you've done an incredible job describing the thoughts and the thinking and the intention behind all of it. Was there an experience where you yourself found yourself?
Oh, absolutely. So, as you mentioned in the introduction, I've run and started a bunch of companies and sold most of them, except a couple of not-for-profits and the current burnout breakthrough business that I'm running. But the at one the business that I spent the most time in building and in actually working in was an advertising agency that I founded and helped run for 25 years. And I mean, you've got to be stupid to have an advertising agency in the first place. I mean, if what you want is peace of mind, I mean, you should either be a bomb expert, or a hostage negotiator, or an advertising agency owner. I mean, it's just not a good profession for a stress-free life. Number one. Number two, I was really sort of wired with, I come from generations of entrepreneurs. And so being an entrepreneur is sort of a natural thing, but there's also this history that I'm convinced is in my bones and my blood now of feast and famine, of huge success, but also cataclysmic failure. And both not just business failure, but psychological failure, alcoholism, drug addiction, premature death, and so forth, that comes with being kind of heir to that entrepreneur.
That's very associated to the identity.
Exactly.
As this generational entrepreneur. Wow.
So anyway, I got to a point where I was totally burned out within my advertising agency, and was displaying a lot of the symptoms that I now realize are predictable and symptomatic, and are exactly follow the World Health Organization definition of what burnout is. But anyway, I got to a point of exhaustion that I couldn't recover from, that a good night's sleep or a vacation or a weekend or whatever didn't help. I was always exhausted. I had no motivation, was trying really hard to find something else to do, and began to pursue my own coaching career within the advertising business. I got at odds with my business partners who wanted to continue in the advertising business, and I wanted to go in different directions. I probably should have left the agency years before I did. To my shame, I didn't have the guts, really. Because
can you share with us some of the thoughts that you had that were kind of like keeping you going down this path of complete and total burnout and exhaustion?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that because I had hired a coach myself about midway into my agency career, I realized that I was really captivated by the power that coaching can have, and the impact it had on me. And I started to get training in that area, and worked very hard to develop coaching chops myself, and ultimately to launch a coaching business within the agency. But what I should have done was to say to my partners, look, I'm out, take me out. I'm going in this other direction. But I had this real fear of losing everything. And there was something about the mothership of this advertising agency that had paid for all the things, entrepreneurial businesses paid for, cars and insurance and all those things. And to kind of take the flyer again was because I was so burned out and depressed. I think I just didn't have the guts or the confidence to do it. Anyway, I really got to a point where I was at odds with my business partners, and as I say, I should have left, and I didn't, because I just didn't have the guts to do it. Anyway, finally, we reached an impasse. I reached an impasse with my business partners, and where they were fed up, and I did ultimately sell the business, and I did take this flyer, but the burnout following that, there was a lot of resentment that I had, again, to my shame. Resentment about my
towards your business partners.
Exactly. That I realize now is mainly burnout related. I mean, that one of the chief symptoms, one of the top three, is to feel disconnected from the people that you work with and for, even your customers and investors and partners, but ultimately for it to take the kind of the darker turn of feeling resentful towards even customers, investors, partners, et cetera. And I was really in the thick of this. And even after I did leave the business and start or take this coaching business from the agency and really get it rolling, I still had a lot of resentment, a lot of exhaustion, etc. And
And
it
then
took
probably even like shame that you were feeling that resentment, right? Feeling
exactly,
guilty that you were resenting them.
exactly.
And the resentment, I mean, you would know this better than me. Is it showing up because you literally are at your limits? There's no space, there's no room, there's no give, no slack. And so just a regular employee just, coming to the boss saying, "Hey, we need this," and you might lose it on them because you don't have space for that in your life. Is that kind of what is happening
That's
on the
certainly that's part of it. I mean, it's just part of the pathology of burnout.
okay.
I've had so in addition to being a coach, I am also, as you said, a licensed mental health therapist. And I thought that at
Mhm.
the time I ought to be able to either look into my coaching bag of tricks or into my therapist bag of tricks and have a solution for my own
Wait, you
burnout.
had both of those things as you were in burnout.
Yes. Yeah. I had
Get out.
because of the PTSD organization I
Okay.
started, uh, kind of required me to
Okay.
become proficient in understanding behavioral health much better than I did when I started it. So I got a master's degree in clinical counseling and became a therapist.
Get
Um,
out. So was
anyway,
that even maybe contributing to some of the guilt and the frustration, is this belief that I should be able to figure this out for myself? Was there any of that that was going on?
I think there's a part of it for sure that was um, the shame of really knowing that the resentment that I felt was really more regret and shame for my own inability to pull the trigger,
Wow. Okay.
get out of this agency, go do this thing I wanted to do that I just didn't have the confidence or the guts to do for quite a
Okay.
while, and
Okay.
and then allowed this thing to reach ahead that it did. Um, and anyway, so I was really struggling because now I'm out of the agency. I've launched this coaching business full bore that I'd really developed within the agency,
Mhm.
and but I'm still feeling exhausted and resentful and
Wow.
having real trouble with motivation. And I just couldn't find, neither in my coaching bag of tricks nor in my therapy bag of tricks, kind of the solution to this.
Wow.
And I was fortunate to really stumble into some concepts, both, and I'll talk about a couple of books that I recommend, but I was able to stumble into a couple of ideas, partially in the mental health field, partially in the kind of self-help field. I did a
Mhm.
lot of research into burnout as a phenomenon, and studied in particular a woman at University of California, Berkeley, named Christine Maslach, who is pretty much regarded as the czarina of burnout,
Mm.
who's done the most research over 40 or 50 years into workplace burnout, and really began to get to the evidence-based, both the symptoms of burnout, but also
Okay.
the evidence-based practices that can really turn it around. And so I kind of ate my own cooking. I'd pick up these little tidbits from the research, then I tried them on myself. Some of them would work, some wouldn't. Then I
Uh-huh.
would try them on both my coaching clients and my therapy clients who were willing to be guinea pigs, who were also going through burnout.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we were able to stumble onto some things um, and I'm so grateful for this, were able to not only turn around my burnout and actually bring me to a point of fulfillment and happiness that I'd never experienced before. I would have
Wow.
been grateful just to not feel the exhaustion and the despair of burnout, but I found that not only was I able to do that by following some of these techniques, but also to really experience a level of happiness that I'd never experienced before. And then I
Wow.
started to see this in some of my clients, both coaching clients and therapy
Mhm.
clients. And then we built this into, we created mastermind groups around this where we could get together and talk about what's working and what's not. And
Yeah.
that added another dimension to it. And ultimately, those face-to-face mastermind groups became Zoom groups. We started working with people across the country,
Mhm.
and we're getting the same kinds of results in a virtual environment.
Wow. That's so incredible. Are there things that are signs that somebody is either in burnout or headed towards burnout, I have a suspicion. I mean, this has been my experience actually.
Yeah,
Like high performers do a very good job of just
yeah,
toughing it out and
right.
not acknowledging the signs that their body is sending them, even their mind is sending them, and just thinking they need to power through. And so,
Yeah,
what are some of the signs, signals, red flags that could be showing up for somebody
sure.
that tells them they are on the train to
Yeah.
Burnout City?
Well, one of the things I'll give you when we're done here, for show notes, I'll give you a link to an online assessment that can really tell people, where they
Okay.
stand. But, the sort of, there's a three-legged stool of symptoms for burnout, as defined by the World Health Organization and by Christine Maslach and other scientists.
So it's like
But
a real
basically,
diagnosis. It's not just a
yeah, absolutely.
description.
And this is something that's kind of important for people to recognize, that in the last couple of years, the World Health Organization and the American Psychiatric Association have both designated burnout as a distinct bona fide disorder all its own. And while
Wow.
it has symptoms that are related to, or that kind of resemble depression or
Okay.
anxiety, and various stress, disorders,
Hmm.
and also, actually, there's a lot of symptoms that resemble PTSD. There's other symptoms that resemble, obsessive compulsive,
Okay.
kind of disorders. But the main thing is, the main kind of the canary in the coal mine is the kind of fatigue that, doesn't go away, where you go to bed tired and you wake up tired. And
Mm.
I know one of the things I went through personally was wondering, is the day going to come where I'm not going to be able to fake it till I make it one more day, where
Right.
I'm not going to be able to get out of bed. And if I don't get out of bed as an entrepreneur, my business stops, right?
Hmm.
And um, it's that it really calls the question of, I've been willing to and able to work and work and work and work and work, but what happens if one day I can't? And so that's one of the main symptoms, is this sort of
Okay.
bone tired mental and physical fatigue that doesn't go away. Coupled with that is
Even like you said previously, even when you like go on vacation or you
right,
take a few days and you just don't feel recovered after that.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's one of the main signs, and it has to do with this being a stress disorder, where we literally burn up our cortisol and adrenaline systems from being on high alert past the point that a human being can sustain that.
Yeah.
So there's both the physical, depletion of all of those systems, plus a psychological, overwhelm. So and this is one of the main things that I notice when I'm talking to our clients. They report just a bone tired fatigue that doesn't go away. So that's number one. Number
Okay.
two is a feeling of not only a lack of motivation, but a real disconnection from the people, places, and things that used to
Mm.
inspire us, or that we used to be passionate about. Even our own businesses or our own customers or our own products or services. We begin, as entrepreneurs in particular, to notice that we just, our give a damn kind of leaches away to nothing,
Wow.
which is also very, when you're a passion based person, as
Yeah.
most entrepreneurs are, it's really scary. If that's your
Yeah.
go-to superpower, and now it doesn't work, it's very scary. And
Hmm.
then the other symptom is, kind of a transition from not just feeling disconnected or isolated from others, but feeling a real resentment or bitterness, antagonism
Hmm.
towards coworkers, customers, investors, partners, etc. There are lots of other symptoms, but those are kind of the main three that the World Health Organization has identified, and that, I certainly see in most of the literature around burnout.
Yeah. And you very well described your experience of those symptoms in your own
Right.
process of burnout. And something that's kind of a revelation to me on this conversation is I didn't know it was an official diagnosis from the mental
Yeah.
health organization. I had no idea. And I thought it was just kind of a descriptor of what somebody's
Right.
feeling. And that's fantastic to hear, first of all, because I know quite a few entrepreneurs who experience this level of burnout. And I myself, we don't need to go into my story, but I started to see how I could get on that train and I could
Sure.
go down that road. And as a mother, I felt like that just wasn't an option for me. And so I had to make changes really early on. And you know, it's easy to set up your life to support this overwhelm, right? And to have
Sure.
this belief that, and I think sometimes one of the thoughts is, well, this is just for another couple months or even just another year, right?
Exactly.
We think that someday it's magically going to change when we don't realize what we're doing is we're setting up the business to require that of us. It's not going
Exactly.
to magically change. It won't change at all. It's been engineered to be like that. And so you have
Exactly.
to reverse that. So
And
what are some things?
there's almost like an addictive quality. I've noticed in
Oh yeah.
entrepreneurs,
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
It becomes a part of
there's
the
a
identity.
certain, it's almost like one of the few addictions I don't have is a gambling addiction, but it's almost like,
Yeah.
what I understand about a gambling addiction, it's the action, it's the stress on your body, and on your stress systems. It's partially the action, and this is one of the reasons why entrepreneurs
So
get.
wait, let me make sure I understand that. You're saying with gambling, even though you haven't experienced this, part of what the addiction is the feeling of that stress. They get addicted to that stress in the
Exactly,
gambling.
exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
and so part of it is, part of it too is that, and we don't recognize this, we're not necessarily conscious of it, as we're going through it. But part of it is we have this, again, this sort of magical thinking or superstition that when I am stressed out, that's what gets me to perform at my very highest level.
Totally.
Kind of like the
Yep.
people who, and I was one of these, who would put off writing the paper until the last minute. And then
Hmm.
the stress involved with painting myself into a corner, caused me to act. And unfortunately, when you have that as a superpower, when you kind of
Yeah.
play with your body chemistry, and that's really the first chemicals we get addicted to is our own body chemistry. We
Hmm.
learn, even as small children, how to generate cortisol, adrenaline, serotonin, neopinephrine, et cetera. Um, and we learn how to generate these chemicals, our own little chemistry set, and create this, buzz, really, our own little
Yeah.
buzz. And unfortunately, we can become superstitious around thinking, this is my superpower. This is how I get things done. This is how I actually manage my own insecurity and stress. Is
Hmm.
that I put myself into these stressful situations because I can kind of count on that for then my body to kick in and for me to do what I need to do. And unfortunately, it's ultimately the bad news is that one thing you can count on is that you will burn out. It's not a
Hmm.
question of if, it's a question of when. At some point, if you don't change that technology, the cape will turn into kryptonite. It just
Yeah.
can't continue because we age out of it, or our bodies run down as a result of it. But it's inevitable that we will burn out in some form or another if we don't discover a different way.
Scott, this is absolutely fascinating and so relevant to today. When I started my business 18 years ago, people weren't talking about entrepreneurship. In fact, I was called a small business. There was no glory around that.
No,
And yet entrepreneurship has totally become this incredible flag, and it is. It's really incredible, but at the same time, with it has come this whole mantra of I'll sleep when I'm dead, and I work harder than anybody else, and I've just got to power through. And that mentality, when taken to the extreme, it's destructive and it literally takes lives. And it disrupts mental health, it disrupts physical health, and it ultimately prevents us as entrepreneurs from being able to accomplish and do and achieve the things that we feel called to do. Like the whole reason why we're here in the first place. And like you talked about, like we get into this because we're super passionate about something, and then the burnout causes us to lose our passion. Like that's so devastating. It is. And so I love that you are taking the time to really describe this, because I think there are so many people out there who are literally in the middle of all of this, and this might be the first time that they're like, holy cow, I think I might have a problem. Because again, it just gets so glorified and praised, right? He's such a hard worker. He's the first here and the last to leave. Like that gets
exactly.
glorified. And you take that over the years, it's not sustainable. So I
No.
love that you're really taking the time to shine a light that this, yes, there's some good components of this, but taken to the extreme, it's a problem, and it will prevent you from being able to do the very thing that you're in entrepreneurship for the first place. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like gripping the steering wheel, Scott, you're shining a light on this. I am exactly as you're describing yourself years ago. What are some things that they could start to do? Because you can't, as we described, they've built up their business and their organization to require this of them. And you can't just stop it all, or the whole thing really does come crashing down. So
Right.
how can they've got to step out of it, essentially.
Right. Exactly.
So what are
Well,
some things they can do?
the first step really is to realize, and hopefully it's not a health problem, either a mental health or a physical health problem that causes people to consider this, but often it is. There's this, people reach a point, as I mentioned, where they're so exhausted that they're really concerned that at some point, maybe I won't be able to get out of bed. Maybe I will just not be able to work. And if I can't work as an entrepreneur, not only do I lose my livelihood, but I lose my identity. So, hopefully it doesn't reach that point. What I would recommend that people do to begin with, and again, I'll share this, I'll share the link with you when we're done, but we do have an online assessment that is a very helpful way to kind of pinpoint the specific symptoms that you're having and the severity of them. The main thing to realize, and this goes, I'm sure it goes to your experience as a coach, and certainly mine as an entrepreneur coach, is that ultimately we have to decouple the number of hours from the contribution that the founder is making. That it's not a function of how many hours, it's a function of impact. And so the question is, and this is kind of the math conversation I need to have with my clients sometimes, to just say, what is your effective hourly rate? And if it's $100 or $200 an hour, then you shouldn't be doing any work that someone can do for $20 or $40 an hour and do it much better than you can. So, sometimes we can appeal to people out of their understanding of what it means to scale a business to something that is sustainable. And, what often happens when entrepreneurs try to do everything themselves, it can't be a very big business because it can't outgrow them. And so what sometimes—
Can we dive into that really quick? Because
Sure.
that's ultimately what's happening. They are doing way too much stuff that isn't actually creating the accurate ROI, and they're doing low level tasks, but there's some thoughts and thinking that are causing them to do that. Can you shine a light on some of those thoughts or those beliefs that are
Sure.
causing them to make that mistake?
Absolutely. I just got off the call with my Burnout Breakthrough Mastermind group, our weekly Zoom group. And one of the things that I found that's very common with burnout people is they won't admit to it usually, but a pretty profound sense of perfectionism. And so, the sense is that really nobody can do it as well as I can do it. And it takes—
I've never had that thought, Scott. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Or the thought that I hear so often is that it would take more time to explain or train you than it would for me to just do it. And that kind of thing means your business will never get bigger than, single digit millions of dollars, and maybe even not even $1 million, because there's no scale in it. And not only is it a death sentence if you take it all the way to the end, what happens, and it's funny and I'm sure you've been through this, but so when you start out and you're single and you're dumb and you can work 1 million hours a week, then there's no cost to this. Right. Then maybe you get married and your spouse wants to see you a little bit more often, so there's a cost to it. Then maybe you have children and they really want to see more of you, and that causes a lot of stress on this whole idea that of me just putting more and more time into it. Then comes the realization, oh my God, these children might want to go to college, and I can't make enough money in an unscaled, unleveraged business where I do everything to pay for all of these things. It just simply isn't possible. So there's a certain amount of life cycle activity that tends to grind it out of a lot of us. But that said, the first thing that I usually do when I'm talking to entrepreneurs is just to appeal to their business sense that this is not sustainable. This won't work. You can't get to the place that you want to get. So that's number one. Number two is to sort of acquaint them with the idea that this is a bona fide mental and physical disorder. It has symptoms. It has evidence-based techniques and skills that are proven to help you recover, but it won't get better on its own. In fact, it'll only get worse. And most of the things that most people try to do to make burnout go away make it worse. We fly into action, most of us, and we just think working harder is the answer to any problem.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. Yep.
So, that's
Because hard work is what has always solved their problems in the past. And
uh,
so let's just do more of that.
and even though they might concede, well, that's true. I need to scale my business. I need to practice Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week concept. I need to be super scaled and decentralized and so on and so forth. That's a good theory. But when it comes right down to the situation of I've got to make payroll and I've got to pay for kids' braces or whatever it is, then this is no time for theory. And what most burned out entrepreneurs will do is work harder, because that's their sort of, that's the one trick pony is I'm going to work harder because I know that works. I don't know if scaling my business and delegating to other people, it sounds like it might work, but this is no time for theory.
Yeah. And there's this loss of glory that happens when you're not the one who made it all happen. And that can be really uncomfortable to let go of.
No question. There's a ton of, there's a ton of ego involved. I'm certainly have been really guilty of that. And, it takes being bashed about by the real world to get humble enough to realize that I can't do this on my own. And any business that I would do entirely on my own is never going to be a very big business.
Right. So for somebody who's really resonating with these thoughts that are keeping somebody stuck, can you paint a picture of what it can look like for this hardworking, high-performing, high-achieving CEO and entrepreneur? I think part of what's happening is they can't even imagine what it would look like to be and operate at a level where they're not burned out and flat on their back and can't recover on vacation. So can you paint a picture of what that can potentially look like for somebody?
Absolutely. And this is the thing that I'm just so delighted to report and so grateful to report personally, is that I never thought I could get out of this burnout cycle. I really didn't. I had been able to get out of different mainly self-imposed problems in the past, but I could not get out of this one. I just couldn't pull out of this nosedive. And in spite of what I knew about coaching and therapy and all these PTSD, I just couldn't find a way out. So, I'm very grateful to report that, first of all, it's very, very possible in a remarkably short amount of time, as I think about it now, to not only get your energy back, but more importantly, to get a motivation and passion and inspiration back, but now in a healthy, humble way that is sustainable. All I really wanted was to be able to have enough energy predictably to be able to go and do my work. If I could just have that, I would have been willing to stand on my head in the middle of the street, whatever it took. I was willing to do that. But what I found is that there's much, much more that's possible in recovery from burnout. And I found this also in our clients, that they would have given anything to just regain their energy and their motivation. But what they've also achieved is an infinitely more fulfilling life, more joyful life, even than my best day pre-burnout. That's been my experience. And unfortunately, it takes something that is as really potentially deadly as burnout, to get us there. But my experience is that not only can burnout go away, I was talking to a guy in our mastermind today who said, yeah, the burnout is gone. One day he just sort of realized, wow, it's gone. The exhaustion and the despair and the hopelessness and the overwhelm is gone. But he said, even more than that, the thing that's really got his attention and certainly got mine is that it's possible to live in a way when you can give up this idea that it's all up to me and how many hours I put in, that it opens the door for a brand new life that is infinitely more fulfilling and joyful than my best day when I was trying to run everything myself.
Yeah. And it sounds like in your experience, when that showed up for you, it was kind of shocking and surprising. And it sounds like your
Was.
client is experiencing the same. And that phrase that you said just prior, it's all up to me. Like that is that's like the dominant phrase that I
Yeah.
see with my CEOs.
Yeah.
And again, like that belief has helped them and served them in their life. And it's what drove them to build the business. And it's in
That's right.
some ways was part of the initial success. But
Huh.
as entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to take things to the extreme. And so it's
That's
just
right.
when that swings to the extreme, it's all up to me. That belief can eventually destroy you.
It really can. It's one of those, the old saying about the good is the enemy of the best is really true in the case of burnout, where having that ability to work harder than anybody else or care
Yeah.
more than anybody else is really good, but it's not the best. And and in a way, it's very much, to use the addiction metaphor. I mean, in the beginning, heroin is euphoria, and then it's euphoria with problems, and ultimately it's just problems. And that's
Mhm.
often what happens also with people who are perfectionists and feel as though they have to do it all themselves, is that it really, really works until it doesn't work. And it can turn, unfortunately, it can turn pretty quickly on people.
I loved how you described that. It's really good, but it's not the best. And we have a tendency to kind of put things in good, bad, black,
Yeah.
white, right, wrong, right? This very binary thinking. And so we see this belief that it's all up to me as good. And you just threw it onto a spectrum and said, well, there are good components, but it's not the best. Like there's versions of that that are better and will help you and serve you more.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that especially when you've had your ego stroked or you've had some
Yeah.
success. It's hard to believe that I'm not right all the time. And one of the chief recognitions of burnout is, at least for me, is I got to a point where I knew I couldn't find my ass with both hands. I
Oh
I
man.
really didn't know how to get out of it. As resourceful as I may have been or thought
Mhm.
I was, I could not find a way out of this in the beginning, and that was extremely humbling and scary, but it turned out to
Yeah.
be a really wonderful thing.
And maybe you shared this, but did you have some external help that was helping you? I mean, in this moment where you were just so blind to your own opposition and you were in that echo chamber, was it an outside influence and perspective that really helped you find your way?
Um, I mean, I talked to a lot of my colleagues, my fellow therapists, and they tried to support me, as best that they could. And certainly there were definitely some things that I picked up there. But I think part of it is, like a lot of things, you really have to hit bottom.
Mm,
And for certainly with entrepreneurs, there's no shortage of ego, and my ego damn near killed me. I mean,
yeah,
that's really what it comes down to. So I'm
that's
sure I was
true.
getting a lot of great input that I couldn't hear at first.
Hmm. Yeah.
And and then gradually some things out of desperation, I was willing to try some things that I was sure wouldn't work, but turned out that they're very effective.
That's such a common story, Scott. It's true. Like until it's almost like we're moving through our life convinced of our own ideas, and something critical happens to make us be like, whoa, hold on a second, right? Maybe it's a doctor giving us a diagnosis. Maybe it's a business partner saying, I'm out of here. This is not working for me. Maybe it's even a spouse who says, I want a
Right.
divorce. Maybe it's our kids saying, I don't want you to talk to me anymore. Like, don't call me. Or
That's right.
maybe it's even like all of a sudden we're super disoriented in our own faith. We thought we knew what we believed, and then
Exactly.
all of a sudden we've got all these questions. And it's
Yeah.
it's like you said, we reach this critical point. Maybe it's rock bottom, where it's like, look, Katie, whoever, you are, you can't keep going down this road. Guess what? Dead end. It's not working anymore.
That's right.
And if we continue down that road, we will get the death sentence. We will get the divorce papers. And
That's
I
right.
mean, that's devastating. It's devastating. So, and
It's
what you're sharing
interesting.
with us is there is hope. There is hope.
There
Go
is
ahead.
hope. And, it's interesting you mentioned divorce, and the other things that happen is that a lot of times people going through burnout, not knowing what's happening, will think, well, I've got to sell this business, or I've
Mhm.
got to quit this job, or I've got to
Yeah.
get divorced. I've got to find a new spouse, or I've got to find
Yeah.
a new place to live.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I've seen a number of clients that have thrown away things, hoping that kind of if we change things on the outside, that the
Yes.
inside will feel better. And unfortunately, it's, painting a house that's ridden with termites. It's an inside job. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, I've seen people get divorced and try some really extreme, kinds of what they'd hoped would be solutions.
Mhm.
And this is why I found in a lot of cases that actually the things that people do to get out of burnout can make burnout much worse.
Well, and you just pointed out something so critical, and I want to shine a light on this. Is, as entrepreneurs, we are really hard workers and we say, I'll do anything. But what we're really saying is, I'll do anything as long as it's external. I'll do all those external things and I'll push myself
Right.
and I'll do the quote, really hard work and difficult things because like turning inward, that's excruciating. And in
Exactly.
fact, maybe the reason we're pushing ourselves so hard inside of our business is because we're terrified of what's going on inside of there, right?
Exactly.
And so we say we're hard workers, but we're not willing to do the hard work of
Yeah.
going internal. And
I know that
really,
for me. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great
really
point.
like that is no question your greatest opportunity. And yet we
Absolutely.
will avoid it tooth and nail.
That's right. Boy, that's a great observation, Katie. And I'm sure you've seen it in CEOs or maybe yourself. I certainly see it myself that, what I wanted to do was, I said that I was willing to do anything to get out of this burnout. But the
Yeah.
fact is, I was willing, I really what I wanted was to do things my way and get different
Yes.
results. And
Yeah.
I really didn't want to change. I didn't really want to
Yeah.
consider looking at things differently. And unfortunately, if you have enough ego and um, it is kind of a compulsive, obsessive mindset, you can kill yourself that way. And so, yeah, you've really put your finger on something that's really important because the last thing I'm willing to do anything to recover
Yeah.
except
Wait, wait,
recover.
you want me to do that? I'll do anything but that. Seriously, I'll do anything but that. I'm not doing that. Yeah. And if you're at
That's
that
right.
point, like I think we're talking about your greatest opportunity for and like here's the beautiful thing, Scott. Not only will that help them grow and scale their business, it will
Yeah,
help them in their marriage. It will help them in their physical
absolutely.
health. It will help them in their relationship with their kids. I'm saying them, us too, like me too, right? And
Yeah,
here's the thing, like there's always another level of all of these things, right? And I am just as guilty as anybody else of a lot of these things that we've talked about today. And you've done such an incredible job of really shining a light on the opportunities. That's how I like to see it. Yes, there are obstacles, but really if you really tell the truth of it all, it's actually your
yeah,
greatest opportunity.
yeah.
And you've got so many incredible resources. We have them in the show notes because Scott is a man who can really help you navigate these things. And you've done an amazing job of showing us how you've done it for yourself. You've done it for your clients. You're doing it in your mastermind. And so I just want to thank you for being on, for telling your story, for
Oh, my
really
pleasure.
shining a light on all of these issues. And I encourage everybody to click on the links that are in the show notes. He can really help you if you find yourself on the train to burnout. So, Scott, thank you so much. And before you leave, I want to
Thank you,
ask you a
Katie.
few kind of rapid fire questions, if that's
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
What's something that you do consistently every day in your life?
Every day when I wake up, I repeat the prayer, thank you, God, for all our blessings.
Mm,
That has really sustained me. And it kind of came out of recovery from burnout, but just basically a practice of gratitude.
that is beautiful. I love that. So good. What's a book that you find yourself frequently revisiting, maybe even gifting to people?
And you've probably read it. It's called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And
Hmm.
in fact, he just came out with, I just got his new book called, I don't know what it's called, but it's Untethered Soul Part 2, basically. And
Okay.
I've given that to a lot of people. And I just find I get so much out of Michael Singer's wisdom.
Yeah, same. I listen to him on podcast interviews and YouTube. I think that's a great place. If somebody doesn't have the book, they can start there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a lot of wisdom. What's some advice that you've received from somebody in your life that's really benefited you?
You know, um, one of a turning point in my life when I was a younger man, my mentor at the time, a wonderful guy named Click Weston, asked me, "So Scott, when are you going to be happy?" And no one had ever asked me that before. And it sort of, at that time in my life, I was sort of an angry young man and so forth.
Mm,
And my whole idea was, well, God, I don't know. I guess when my punch list is filled out, I guess
mm,
when everything lines up exactly the way I want it to be, then I'll be happy. Otherwise, you'd be silly. You'd be an idiot to be happy otherwise.
mm.
And so he said, no, I mean, seriously, when next week or next month, when are you going to be happy? And it was sort of a kind of a Zen koan that really struck me and strikes me today too.
What's interesting is like, it sounds like it wasn't even something that was on your list or that you were even considering, right?
No, no,
Happiness.
no. Survival was
Yeah.
my main goal.
Wow. Scott, you've shared so much with us, and you can answer this question any way that you would like, but what's working now?
Well, I mean, I really eat my own cooking as far as this burnout situation is concerned, and I find that the more that I use these skills, especially the principle of forgiveness. I mean, I guess that's
Mm,
probably the single most powerful. We are just talking about this also in our mastermind group this afternoon, but it's just so powerful. And you've got to be in a world of hurt to consider forgiveness of everybody for everything. And
wow.
that's that to me is certainly as far as my recovery from burnout. But I'd say in general, any happiness that I have today is because I got backed into a corner where there was nothing else to do but to forgive everybody, including myself, of everything.
I love that you highlighted forgiving yourself. I think it's easy to kind of, again, look external. I'll forgive everybody else. And part of what needed to happen. Do you have a practice for um, that process of forgiveness?
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, it's one of the main pillars of the burnout breakthrough process. But really, what it has to do with is, first of all, identifying all of the people that you resent, people, places, things, governments, politicians, sports teams,
Wow.
whatever, and then to systematically release all of the resentment, and to actually to not just release the resentment, but to actively love the whatever the person, place, or thing that you resent. To we use this image of like holding a crying baby.
Mm,
As a parent, holding a crying baby is something you kind of is kind of hard to do in a way. A
mhm.
screaming, baby, and yet that's kind of what it's like to love the people we resent, and to imagine trying to hold that person like you would a crying baby, to try to console
Wow.
them or comfort them, and that visual has helped me a lot.
That's amazing. That's incredible. And to learn more about that process, somebody can come into your program, Burnout Breakthrough. Is that what it's called?
Burnoutbreakthrough.com.
Okay. Absolutely amazing. I would encourage anybody who's really resonating with what Scott has shared with us today, follow that curiosity and go engage with him in this burnout breakthrough. You don't have to be in this place of stress and fear and resentment, and you can live this happy, fulfilling life where you are engaged in your relationships, you're engaged in your business in a new way that maybe you didn't imagine was possible. And Scott can show you how. This is incredible. Scott, this has been absolutely amazing. I really enjoyed our conversation. I could talk to
I
you
hope
for
you.
hours and hours.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And for everybody who's listening, this is what's working now.